And I told Anthony and I were talking last night, and I told him, I said, of course, besides our show together, I think that's by far my favorite show. We just laughed, but yeah, that needed to be longer than what it was.
Yeah, he extended it. I know because he figured it was. I haven't talked to him, but I knew that we went between the two of us. We went over, and he promised his time to the others, so he can't. It's still a work in progress as to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Where's Angelo?
I don't know. I sent him a note. And hang on a second.
And now, see, if you weren't here, he would have. He when I ask where's Angelo, he gives me a completely different answer, and it's always very rude.
You're a member in low standing.
Yes.
I played golf yesterday with Brian Fisher. You know him, right?
Oh, I do. Yeah. How's he doing?
He said. I told him. I said. I talked to him. He's doing good. He's got that. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's a good guy. He was my partner.
You can't dial in from the car?
Huh?
Yeah, you can.
I think he's talking on the phone. Yeah, Brian. He's a good man.
He is a good man. Really a good man.
I'm going to send you another link. Dial in, and we're all here waiting for you.
We had fun.
Ira's here waiting to answer your questions.
What's going?
What came out here that they're whacking the Nasdaq?
I have no idea. I mean, Amazon is getting its ass kicked. Netflix is,
waiting for you.
Falling apart a little bit. Not much, but I really don't know. It's taken me a little bit by surprise.
I think Netflix is broken. I'm waiting for a good short entry on that. Maybe that was
well, listen, we're back to, I don't care, I understand the game of easy money and the ability to float things, and then it forces people to really search for things that they would never touch just because they have to,
Yeah.
In the language of Rick Santel, Tina. But you know what? Sometimes when you mess with Tina, you get syphilis, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, well, Angelo's being half Jewish right now, and he's at the deli, so he doesn't know.
Oh, he's at the deli. Well, he's in New York. What do you want from him?
Here.
He's in Mount Kisco. I didn't know they had delis in Mount Kisco. What the hell? What is it? What, did he go up to Tannersville for the weekend up in the Catskills? Trying out his humor?
Yeah, he's getting his dead fish sandwich. I was looking at, Kushar's thesis about platinum, and I looked at this about a week or so ago when it started breaking out against the gold. And it really looks good. Yeah,
and it's really value-wise. I mean, you're nowhere. You're still a negative $500, $541, which is, wow. Last time the metals had any kind of move, it was $300 premium, I believe. So, but platinum has struggled because of the diesel situation, with Volkswagen. Because palladium is used in all catalytic converters, but for diesel, it's much more heavier platinum, usage of platinum. So when that got in trouble, platinum, became less desirable, and people who had stockpiled it got hurt. Gazelle talks about it, but and he talks about that wealthy people do buy platinum jewelry, and as long as I've been trading metals, which is a long time, platinum was always deemed a much more Asian precious metal as far as watches and rings, and interesting, but it is.
It's I like the thesis, and I was looking at the PPLT, but they don't trade options on it, so you can't buy leaps. If you just buy something out of ways, you have to actually expend the money to buy the ETF and sit with it. So I was just trying to figure out a different way to play that.
I mean, trust me, the world is not getting better as far as resolving issues, no matter what the mainstream throws. And that's not conspiratorial. That's just a fact. Things in Germany are not good, not just economically, but the politics are starting to. There's an article in the FT today about violence from both the
left and right.
The left and right, yeah, both wings. Ramping up violence.
I'm reading a book right now called The Dark Valley, and it's about the political crisis in Europe and across the world in the 20s and 30s, and how they drift towards extremism, both the left and the right.
Who wrote that?
The Dark Valley. If I can't remember right now, I got it on Alibris. It was published like 18 years ago, and. But anyway, there's a lot of analog. You start to throw in real economic crisis at some point. Watch out.
Yep. Oh, and that's the bad narrative, because everybody wants to make it the narrative about the immigrants, because that's what fits. Well, it can't be any other reason. It has to be these idiots. But it's not, and that's why it's gaining momentum. And some of the guys who write into the blog, who are German, they push back at times, but then other times they go, no, you're right about this. But it's what they're doing. And again, you can say to the elites across the world, when I say that, the Davos crowd will say, basically stop complaining. The Germans have gotten every benefit in the world. Even Trump will say it at times, because they have a weaker currency than they otherwise would have. So just go with it. But that means that if I do go with it, I have to accept the liabilities that you have laid on me. And again, I've never had the ability to vote whether I want that or not, and it's going to come back to bite them. The fact that the German people, they're going to demand at some point a referendum. They're going to demand it. Otherwise, on the whole Maastricht, because the French voted for Maastricht. They had a referendum, and just for people's edification, and that was when Mitterrand, who is probably the most popular French politician after de Gaulle, when Mitterrand was pushing for it in '92, and the vote was 50.2 to 49.8.
I think he had the best mistresses.
Well, that goes with every office in the land. But the Germans have never voted on it. The Danes voted on it. Now we know the Brits have certainly voted on it.
I think the Italians are going to do whatever the hell they want, which is basically screw it. And Boris Johnson allows the Italians to do, because Brexit, he's going to use that. Salvini will use it just as a distraction. These people are not stupid. If you read, it's like if you read about the flyover states in America, everybody presumes, and the way that the media covers them, is that these people are stupid, or as Hillary would say, deplorables. They are not stupid. These are the people who fix everything that you own, who grow the food that you eat. They know, and they'll allow themselves to be on the short side of things up to a point. Yeah, they don't want to be political, but when they get political, watch out.
Yeah,
they always sacrifice for the greater good, and then when they're fed up, look out.
Yeah, well, look I've written in the blog really for 10 years, because I started writing in December of '09. So about how Tim Geithner and Bob Rubin and these guys, they screwed Main Street, and Obama was not sophisticated enough economically, and these were his advisors. And Main Street got screwed while Wall Street got bailed out, and it resonates. And that's why Lizzie
Eric
Warren
Holder was a Wall Street attorney.
Sure, he was, absolutely an insider par excellence. I love the media can only look at color; they don't look at anything underneath that. I go back to Martin Luther King. They didn't look at the content of his character. Only the color of his skin. They violated everything that Martin
really belonged to.
Yeah, he's pathetic. And Tim Geithner, truly truly did massive amounts of harm, as did Larry Summers. Listen, I go down the roster of who's on the G30, and that should make everybody nervous. And I'm sorry that Paul Volcker has lent his good name to it, but it's quite a cast of characters.
I think the EU when Merkel unilaterally just without consulting the rest of the EU said, "Oh, we're going to take 1 million of you people, and if you enter illegally and tromp across all these other countries and all this stuff, we're just doing that." It said everything about really what's going on in the European Union.
Well, it opened up
other smaller states.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It elevated Orban in Hungary, and even the Poles, with the justice, who really have a lot of power. Forget about Donald Tusk. He's got a big mouth, but I'm not sure how much influence he has within Poland itself. You saw the way they handled Italy, and Italy's what happened with Five Star and the Northern League was only in response to what Brussels did by squeezing out Berlusconi. I mean, that was a coup d'etat by any measure of legality, and totally overrode the popular will of the Italian people when they put in what's his name, Mario Monti, and the guy could never win an election because when he had to run for an election, they beat him bad. So, and the same thing went on in Greece. So there's a lot to answer, and Ireland has got its own issues too. They're not out, So there's a lot of issues at work here, and what they're
Ireland
trying to do.
has a special deal where right now they're aligned with the elites of Europe because they're like a tax haven.
Yeah.
That's tolerated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's the quid pro quo on that,
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they think that they got healthy, after all the stuff that they had to go through. They have some serious issues, and Boris Johnson is very aware of it, which is why he's going to push for that, for the on the border issue between Northern Ireland and Ireland.
Yeah.
There's a lot at play here, and nobody has the answers. But I certainly know that what we hear is the popular narrative. That is certainly not the answer, because there are things simmering underneath that you have to be.
But it's also the United States, like this Mueller, thing where there was nothing to it.
Well, it's complicated.
Well, but I mean, the point is that they were trying to overthrow an election. That's really what was going on a fake premise.
Yeah, well, I mean, but this is what
that's pretty dysfunctional.
The modern world has opened us up to. It's like the ability for everybody sitting in this room to trade electronically. There's a lot of ancillary events that take place right along with it, and the technology is way ahead of people's ability to understand exactly what they're playing with. When I say people, I'm talking about the mass people who utilize it, not the people who are actually the ones earning a huge living off of it. They know damn well what's going on. And
so Neil Howe, the guy who wrote The Fourth Turning?
Yeah, I read it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because he also, I'm reading that book, The Dark Valley, and it's about, how in Japan there's a political crisis, and the militarist totalitarians take over in different European countries. It's going on. In the United States, there's stuff going on, and that was, he says that was a fourth turning, and then he says we're in a fourth turning now. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, it's a continual effect of the cycle of history. I had to read it when I found out that when what's his name was, when Steve Bannon was giving it out as his favorite book. I always rush to find out, because if it's your favorite book, let me understand what you're thinking about.
What was your favorite book?
Steve Bannon.
Oh, okay.
He would give it to anybody he met with. Here, you gotta read this. Here, you gotta read that. So I said, okay, I gotta read this. If he's so enamored with it, because again, I try to tell people I'm not going to read those who agree with me. I might if I'm going to learn something from it, but I'd rather read those, just like with the blog. I want my I want somebody who's going to kick me hard and say and challenge my thinking. Going, well, maybe.
Yeah, so, I mean, so like I think it's like the cycles of history concept is a lot of people think there's a lot of truth to it. And he just kind of framed it out better. Is it like a hard and fast? You know, that's how I looked at it. But I think he did a good job.
Yeah, but you know, when I read it, it's bias fitting. You know, because you make things fit because he goes back hundreds of years. I mean, these cycles keep coming. There's, you know, and then they reestablish themselves, and then this changes, and it always winds up in some relatively similar thing, just different because of technology and everything else that comes with it. But these forces are put in motion. You know, it's almost like Counterteeth in his, you know, commodity cycles, studying economic cycles of 60-year durations. There are repetitive things in history. So, but I think, you know, when you set out, I think that was his. He form fitted it. That's the way I felt about the book. I'm not saying that I enjoyed it because it, you know, it made me think about a lot of things. But you know, he's trying to. He had a bias. He had his end, and then he made everything fit. And it's a good read, and it's something to pay attention to, and especially because I still think Steve Bannon is the wartime consigliere to Trump. I still believe that. And I think when the media and others, you know, kind of forced him out, I said it's a big mistake because he's still out there gallivanting around the world, but now he has no official basis. I liked him more when he had an official position because there was a better light shown on him.
He's like incredibly unattractive.
Oh, God.
Until he's standing on his wallet.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I was unmuted. I'm sorry. That was very funny. I really did think I was unmuted.
He looks good.
He does look good. You know, he's that's Trump's McFriend. In his wartime consigliere. I see what you mean, Ira, and I think you're right. Trump keeps him in the background, so he avoids that scrutiny.
Yeah, because he has no official standing.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, they can't. They hate him in Italy. They want to condemn his project.
Oh, believe me. I'm sure Putin loves. I'm sure he meets with the Russians. I'm sure. I can't prove it, but I have to believe that he meets with the Russians. Have to believe. He meets
there
with
is this divide between like a global elite versus, you know, national sovereignty.
Yeah.
So Putin's a national sovereignty, and so is Bannon. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of commonality, and listen, the Chinese see a lot of commonality in that. The world is really setting up battle lines here, and I don't mean between nation states, between forces of thought. As far as do we just roll into a international arena governed by international forces, or does the nation state maintain its place?
You know, in a way, you know, it's 1940 done over again, and I think Boris would say that. And I'm just going to tell you something quick. I read this book once. It was called D-Day from German Eyes, and it was interviews with 4 different German soldiers who were on the Atlantic Wall facing the Allied invasion that day. And 2 of them independently said, we were shocked that the British and Canadian soldiers hated us so much. They came in bayoneting guys who were trying to surrender and killing all of us. And he said, we thought we were there to unify Europe and make it strong and protect it from communism. That's what these soldiers believed, these individual private soldiers on the Atlantic Wall. And I think you have to take that in kind of context of today, and believe it. And why not every German was, went into the Wehrmacht because they wanted to kill all the Jews. It wasn't like that,
Right. No, that's it. There was the German army, which was totally different.
There was justifications for the war, numerous ones, and some of them were idealistic,
Yeah, no. Well, listen, the concept of unifying Europe has been, let's go back to 100 Years' Wars, the 30-Year Wars.
Napoleon, definitely.
Napoleon, who came as close as anybody, as close as Hitler anyway. And then, Louis XIV with the French, were all about that, but the Habsburgs were still a little bit too strong. And, of course, the Spanish throne was still too strong. It was, harder to do, but it's been a desire, and that's what the EU really, once you get to it, is all about. But in order to do it, they have to break down the strength of the nation state, and that's what anybody who will study this will tell you. They should have done that before, of course, by creating a euro bond, by creating a fiscal harmonization where there was a central spending authority and a unified banking system. They went about it ass backwards. First, they had the currency because they wanted to sell the European public on this whole concept, and they thought it would be easier to do if they had a unified currency in their pocket. And that's where we rest today. This is where we are at today. But they were in such a hurry, and I'm telling you, I had arguments with guys who ran ABN AMRO all the way at the top, who when in 1998, 1999, when I would sit and talk to them about what was coming, I said it has to fail. I said I've read so much about it, and they would look at me and go, no, it can't because there's too much money behind it. That was really their big argument. Then Helmut Kohl would sell it to you as putting an end to war in Europe, which I think was a very noble and really helped sell it. But bottom line was there's just so much money behind it.
It's like Bob Cale at Wisconsin said it was, in 92, he said it was, the European Union was formed for the benefit to the elites of Europe. So.
Yeah. And that's banking, financial, as Bernard talks about.
Bureaucracy, more than anything.
Oh yeah, always. But as Bernard talked to me, and I've had many discussions about it with him, is, that the three pillars of the German, what does he call it, are still intact. You have the bankers, the exporters, and he says, and don't minimize this, the imperialists. They're still there. See, but everybody wants to think that the world learned lessons and we can't go back to. And I'm not talking about the Nazis, the Hitler killing Jews. I'm not talking about that. But everything we've learned, and that's what the war was about. No, there's so much more to what took place in Europe since. We can have a lot of start dates, but certainly 1871. Certainly 1871. Victor David Hansen, who I like to read, just had a piece about it, about the Treaty of Versailles. And that by the standards of other treaties, it wasn't that bad a treaty. It's an interesting article that the Germans, what they had asked of the French in 1871 when Bismarck trapped that idiot Napoleon III into a war that the French just had no business fighting. The Germans were they weren't the Germans yet. They were the principalities, but that unifies Germany, and he sucked them in, and that's a famous historical analysis. There's a guy, Fritz Stern, who's written copiously about it. They sucked him in, and then they beat the hell out of him and got everything that they wanted, and most importantly, they got the unified Germany. The same thing that took place in 1991. When Germany reunifies again, which is Kohl's, that's his legacy, is that he unified Germany. But Margaret Thatcher warned against it, as did a few others. But the United States, under George Bush, who was internationalist, being a CIA guy, and he was smarter than everybody else. I respect George H.W. Bush, but I was never a fan because it was too much CIA for me, and pushed that forward. But I always thought that the unification of Germany was going to prove to be a severe problem. And you got to give it to Cole. He saw the historical opportunity to do it. He grabbed it, and he made it happen.
So you're saying something interesting right here. I don't think anybody recognizes that a unified Germany is becoming a problem. And if you look at what Merkel did in the EU, it was a problem.
Yeah, she was a problem.
She had way more power than anybody else, and she used it.
She did, but not affect. You can use power, but to what? So, yeah. And she had,
she's no Bismarck, that's for sure.
No, Sarkozy, beat her up and down, and now Macron thinks he can play her, which he has. She's been, and now all she does is basically rearguard actions, and says 9 to everything.
So in your blog over the weekend, you're saying that Trump's is maneuvered the Fed. So not only is it their prime mandates, but it also have to deal with the mandates of trade politics and some other stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's what and it's my premise, and I've gotten a lot of pushback, which I'm happy about. I like the pushback because but if you really look at it. When the ECB talks about their great fear, their number one fear is the effect of tariffs. When you read the Fed speeches and listen to them, and when Powell makes his pivot, especially in Paris, a few weeks ago, as we've talked about in this room, his concern, the great uncertainties, are the trade issues. So if Trump is trying to use that as leverage against the Fed, hey, ramp up the tariffs. Not only ramp them up, put them in place, and then you force them to do what you want anyway. So my point is, are they taking out an insurance policy against Trump? And I don't know.
Can you go into that a little bit more, Ira?
Yeah, and I don't know that to be the case, but when I look around, I listen to what they write about and what they talk about. There's very serious issues, and then Kudlow, in his I can't stand him, in his efforts to defeat the Navarro wing and get out in front of the Political article on Friday morning. And he said on CNBC that, the tariffs are a lot of times, just negotiation tactics. Well, if that's the case, why does it stop in Beijing? If everybody is so terrified of tariffs, good alliteration, terrified of tariffs, then you can leverage it against the Fed too. Because everybody's in the same boat. Everybody's fighting the same boogeyman, so to speak. And you had Draghi, talk about his fear of tariffs. It's laid out in his press conference. I made note of it as I listened to it.
Yeah, well, I was just looking at some of your picks with Euro Pound and the pound looks like it's going to 1984 lows or 1985 lows.
What, down at 104, 105?
I think you can go. Well, I just went back and pulled out the work from 84 and 85, and the last low split a big number set, and I think this time they can actually get down there and even go farther.
Yeah, I tell you what, you see that level? My buddy Lenny Feldman bought me Turnbull Asser shirts in London. He dragged around Europe for 2 weeks. He was so pissed at me. But they cost like 35 pounds at the time, and they were selling for like $150. So he bought them basically for $35. He brought me 10 shirts. I still have them all. That's how good they were made. But he comes in, he throws the bag at me. He goes, You little ass. See what I do for you? But they were so cheap because the pound was like $1.05.
Yeah, and Mickey and that whole crowd would pay me to go on vacation because they were all short the pounds.
Yeah.
So they were paying me to leave the Merc, and I'd get short, and they told me to go to the airport.
We just talked about that yesterday.
Yeah, so I go to the airport.
Hey.
And, Dean got me out of it was actually in the futures around 105 and change or something. He got me out of my shorts while I was gone.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a superstitious lie.
I don't think some people at the table yesterday when we were talking about that believed that story. I thought that was even funnier when you were telling it.
And it's in the business head character. Believe it.
Absolutely right.
But so if you look at the sterling, and that's okay, everybody's making a big deal out of it. But as I point out, then if it's a total collapse of Britain, then tell me why the FTSE's going up. Tell me why the gilts are yielding. Where are we at today? We're 64 basis points on the 10-year. So would you be lending money to the Brits at 64 basis points if you thought this whole thing was going to blow up? So something, the markets are saying something far different. And in fact, believe me, there are those who are sitting up and watching this, and the Europeans had better be careful here, because as much as they try to squeeze the Brits, if the Brits if the market takes it to a level where they go, hey, you're going to have the proverbial advantage that Trump has been screaming about, because they're going to take this currency. And it's, of course, most important against the euro sterling. And believe me, the Germans are plenty nervous because they do so much. They have the supply chains, and they have so much business with the Brits that they're watching this very carefully. This is not, everybody wants to make it so easy. Oh, they're going to just, hard Brexit. No, and you know what? And you got Boris Johnson, who may be the right guy, and he's not an idiot, by the way. Go really look at his resume. People were so quick to label people, but if you look at him, he's very bright, and he says, you know what? Like the Italians, we have a lot more leverage here. Theresa May could never accept it because she's just not cut from that, and she was surrounded by people who were certainly part of the European elite. It's the John Major crowd. And John Major was a disaster for Britain in so many ways. He still thinks he has relevance. The only relevance he had would be in the ground. As far as I'm concerned, he's another ass.
Oh, yeah, Theresa May, John Major, very.
Yeah, God, very.
So maybe Thatcher and Boris will be the analog.
Well,
Angela's back from his manscaping too.
Okay. All right.
There.
All right. Let's deal with D'Angelo, and then I'm going.
What? Jeez. And anybody who doesn't agree with the elites is labeled deaf, dumb, and blind.
Yeah, that's true.
So, did you read what I wrote last night?
I have it all in front of me, Angelo.
Oh, great. Wonderful.
Piece by piece.
Piece by piece.
Thank you for taking the time.
What is the 5-year German note called?
The bobble. The
what?
The bobble.
The bobblehead? Like I can get one of those at Yankee Stadium?
The bobble, yes.
The bobble. All right. So Jim Rickards thinks that if you buy a 5-year German bobble, it's a call option on the euro.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Which is why, I've maintained all along, you just buy Bunds and sell the French. But right now you're being squeezed. That spread has come in. It was probably 45 differential on the 10s. It's now into about 23. So to me, you've got low risk, because I think he's absolutely right, because it's a high quality paper, no debt. The only thing, and you don't run a lot of risk with it, if the Germans capitulated to the entire EU project and said, okay, we're basically going to turn this into a transfer union, and we're willingly to accept bearing the burden of being the creditor to the entire EU. Now the question is, what do we get for it? Those who drink who put 15 things of sugar in their coffee, their saccharine attitude would be, well, what do you get? You get a weaker currency. You get to be part of this wonderful European market. That's what you get. So thank you for taking on the burden and responsibility of everybody's credit, and that's what you get. And it's okay if the Germans will move to accept that. Fine. And then that Babel play that Rickard's talking about, that'll fail because everything else. It's not that you'll really get hurt with it. It might fall a little bit, but everything else will rally dramatically because now it's guaranteed. Now Italian paper is really German paper. So think about the implications.
I think his reasoning there is that a stronger euro means a weaker dollar and vice versa, because you can't have a weak dollar against a weak euro, correct? It's basically it's a zero-sum game, kind of.
Well, yeah, until the gold becomes the principal discussion.
Unless the two currencies or all the currencies are compared to a third anchor.
Yes, or any other, or the yuan. You know what? We don't know where this goes, but the irresponsibility of governments can become very painful across the board. I mean, the dollar could be bad, and the euro could be bad. So they can all be bad. That's the whole basis of a fiat currency.
Yes.
It's breaking out right now, you guys. It's breaking out against the dollar, the yuan. It's going 50 days right now.
Yeah, be careful with that because there's some.
I'm just looking at it.
Yeah, there's some things in China and ahead of these new talks that are starting tomorrow with Fredo and Bob Lighthizer. So yeah, you're getting a little movement there.
Which one's Fredo?
Mnuchin. Fredo.
So Ira, the gist of what I was trying to say, I tried to keep it brief.
Yeah.
Figuring that you'd be able to read between the lines.
Yeah.
Is that like my point is the dollar on I'm going to call it a short-term basis. I'm not suggesting that the dollar is going to stay here indefinitely. This is good. This trade is going to be good until global growth finally starts to bottom and the market starts to discount that.
Right. I understand your point.
And that's basically it.
Right.
Certainly. What do you think about the Treasury and potentially central banks doing some sort of coordinated effort? I mean,
to what, on the dollar?
Yeah.
I wouldn't discount it, by the way, because again, Bob Lighthizer grew up under James Baker, which is the Plaza Accord, and I would not discount that. When I was reading the responses in the media and other analysts who were analyzing what Kudlow walked back on Friday, and no, there's been no dollar intervention. First of all, that's wrong. 1998, what forced Bob Rubin finally to resign, to give up being Secretary of Treasury, is when Bill Clinton had the Treasury intervene unilaterally to strengthen the yen, by the way. So they weakened the dollar and strengthened the yen at the behest of the Chinese in June of 1998. That's fact. That's not opinion. That's fact. So
how long did it last?
Oh, you can have Judd put up that chart from June until October. It's a pretty heady move.
It moved 20 figures in 2 minutes, and guess who was long yen? The vampire squid bought 60,000 calls in London over the counter 2 minutes before the intervention.
Ticker symbol GS.
The only one that had any balls on the whole thing was Rich Dennis, who came in long 2,400 futures that morning.
Ira, would you say that currency wars were taking place then like they are today?
No, not per se. That was just an issue with China, and the Chinese were upset because they were trying to get their economy going full steam, and the yen had dropped. I don't know what was it, from 110 to eventually 147. So it was it had gone up to 147 to the dollar, and the Chinese were upset because the yen was too weak relative to, especially their currency, because they had a peg currency at the time, and they wanted it. They needed to gain some foothold against the Japanese, so they were upset. And I'm telling you that was a very important week in the history of geopolitical politics and finance, because Bill Clinton went to China for the week. They did this massive intervention, and Bill Clinton never stopped in Tokyo. It was to China and back home again. And the Japanese never forgave the Clintons for that. They thought it was a massive piece of disrespect, and it was totally wrong. But it did reveal to them what the U.S. was looking at.
Yeah, you can see it here on the chart. This was going into this World Bank thing in Washington. It was a World Bank conference in '98, and every single one of these guys were long dollar yen. Every single one of them, from Moore to, I was sitting next to John Conley and FX Concepts, and they were basically saying that the yen was going to 160.
Right, I remember it. Right.
Yeah,
right.
And I asked him. I said, "Where are you wrong?" And I was looking at Howard's cycle sheet. I said, "Where are you wrong?" He said, "I'm not wrong." I said, "Where are you wrong? Are you wrong at 119? Are you wrong at 111? I mean, we went to parity on that move.
And that's real. Okay, so when these people are writing articles, I'm reading them because I have to read them, and I'm laughing. I'm going, no, that's wrong. And the Plaza Accord was a phenomenally successful effort to intervene to weaken the dollar. Phenomenally, for 2 years. In fact, they were so successful weakening the dollar that what happened was they had to undo some of it with the Louvre Accord, which was a move to actually allow the dollar to strengthen because it had weakened way too much. So there's a history of can you do it today? I don't know. And because I'll cite how much money the Treasury has available. That's meaningless. You don't just need currency to go out and sell in the market, to weaken your currency. And the Swiss have certainly showed everybody how they can do it anyway. That's why I always allude to the Swiss, because, and I tongue-in-cheek call them the greatest alchemists in the world, but they have shown the world certain things here, and they've been successful at it. And if you don't think that Draghi is salivating, going, how can I imitate them? I can print euros. I can. Oh, the platinum's moving up pretty dramatically here. I could do that. Copper's moving up too. I wonder if they got a trade deal done. There's all kinds of ways you can do this. Just because you have limited thinking ability doesn't mean that the authorities can't figure out a way to really create the situation where you really hammer the currency. And don't forget, the market is overly long the dollar right now anyway, Angelo. So, we'll go back to your piece. The market is very, and I don't need the commitment of traders shit. You know what? The market is long dollars.
Oh, for sure.
In ways that don't show up on the, first of all, because that's really imperfect now, because the cost of hedging away your exposure, which is why a lot of this goes on, because with the rate differentials, if you hedge them, you wind up paying a lot of money. If you're a Japanese person and you buy dollars, and then you go, well, if the dollar goes lower, I have to be hedged. The cost differential makes it not even worth doing.
That's true. And I mean, that's why I said it looks to me like the dollar is already in the process of topping out. Who wants to flip a coin as to how long that'll last,
Well,
so
yeah. And then they get Trump to do a little backtracking, saying, well, we like a strong dollar. No, he doesn't. No, this is a guy who all he understands is and this isn't a political comment. He's a real estate guy. What he understands is debt, and as I'm now starting to call it, because this is my attitude about the ECB. This should be foie gras debt, because they should be stuffing the bonds down the mouth of every goose in order to make liver pate. You know what? You want these bonds? Here you go. Have another billion. Have another billion. You want them? You need them.
You could also refi the millennials on their student debt.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Everybody does want a weak sovereign currency right now.
Yeah. Well, no. They just want to get their economies healthy.
I think also too, Ira, we start getting a weaker dollar on a trending basis, right? I think you can say hello to emerging markets, all right? But then
yes.
Trump has to be careful what he wishes for, because all of those global assets that have been buying U.S. equities, okay, that flow could reverse on a dime, right? And everyone starts buying, global assets and getting out of U.S. assets, because that's the trade.
Listen, yeah, and it's cyclically, it should be ready to take place soon. And believe me, the gold is starting to signal that. It's just showing that there's a movement away from long-established reaction functions. Look at nothing says it better than the S&P's the stocks are up at their highs, but gold has been moving up. The yen has been on not a great rally, but certainly not falling apart on the proverbial risk on risk off trade. The Swiss is hanging in here, even with whatever efforts the geniuses at the SNB are pulling off. There's a lot of things here that are starting to tear away from what people have called, the symbiotic trades that were taking place. They're starting to break down. These correlations are starting to break down, and I can't stress enough when it comes to as money market opportunity. When it comes to opportunities, having the patience to watch some of these break down and go, okay, so now that they're breaking down, where are they taking us? Where's the next opportunity going to lie? But the greatest opportunities are when correlations break down, and especially in the algo-driven world where correlations are established, by machines and push with a lot of money. But when something is underlying, which you've defied for a long time, that's when you got to you got to pay attention to it. And we are starting to see those breakdowns in correlation.
I think you just articulated I view this chat room as an opportunity, one of the opportunities to identify the algo effect on securities and fading that, and also to watch for the correlation changing and ending.
Yeah.
There's huge money in that, huge.
To me, that's what you want to be aware of, you know what? And that's one of those things when it's a sea change. They don't happen often. So people,
Does this happen in gold? Or sort of looks like it might? Or?
Well, it's what Dalio wrote, with his paradigm shift. I said to somebody when they sent me that, I said, why doesn't he just quote my blog? Because we've talked about paradigm shifts for, in fact, the same language. I said, is he just reading my? Somebody said, oh, you're full of yourself. I said, no, go back and read it. It's really what we've been talking about. Do we have a full paradigm shift on? No. Are there? It's like the plates that cause earthquakes. Do we have tectonic shifts going on? We are absolutely having to, but it takes a lot before they start to get measured on a seismograph.
Well, for instance, over the last few months, gold has gone up sharply, but the dollar's been rising too. So
yeah, right, which is really screwing a lot of people up.
Hey, Ira.
Yeah.
This is
Norval, am I a problem for you? You want huh? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, this is Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
And, as the rooms only city manager, I tend to drag everything back down to Main Street.
That's good. We like to hear
And
that.
I appreciated your passing reference to Powell's lip service to Main Street in your blog post. I think it was 4 days ago.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I've kind of been wondering a lot of late as far as maybe we're measuring the wrong stuff, because I seem to recall, I'm almost 50, and I seem to recall that Greenspan, when he first came in, changed how we were measuring inflation, and as well as in the middle of his tenure while I was an undergrad, changing PCE in place of CPI, and in looking at some of the data points. I mean, currently right now, water, say Avion or Aquafina, is 2.5 to 3 times almost as expensive as a gallon of gasoline, regular unleaded. So are we actually measuring the wrong stuff and trying to determine if the Fed's actually hitting the 2% target or not? I know that's not really eloquent, but
no, Brian. Peter Bookvar speaks to this all the time, and it infuriates him, because one thing we know about the authorities, and that's just not the Fed, it's the Bureau of Labor, so many. When they don't like the results they get, they shift the goalposts. And so that's what they did. So Greenspan said, well, that's not an accurate measure. And then other people will tell you, well, inflation's measured too high because of heuristics, that you get better computers for less money is really a deflationary aspect. But the ability, CPI measures the ability of the average person's everyday existence. We'll go back to Main Street, their cost of living. You go through PCE, there's a lot of things that disappear that you and I have to pay for. And when they say the inflation target, yeah, some issues of healthcare have come down, but for most people, that's not true. And the owner's equivalent rent, which is a big part of their measure, vacillates. Right now, when apartment rents are when the apartments are full, rents are going up, and they've been going up. So certain indexes measure that, others don't. So, again, it's what makes this so difficult, because they're always shifting the goalposts. Hell, the Fed was supposed to stop doing what they were doing when unemployment got to 7%. Then it was 6.5%. Then it was 6%. Then it was 5.7. Then it was 5. Now we're at 3.7, and all they do is keep shifting the goalposts.
Well, and do you think that's when Greenspan? I mean, he threw in liquidity as one of the core tenets of the Fed's mission, and didn't it essentially also discount the Taylor rule, which was a big driver of Volcker's policies as well?
Well, they don't want rules. They don't want hard and fast rules. They don't want to be governed by that. They say they need the flexibility to respond. And when you have hard, fast rules, yeah, it did. And I'm not sure that I'm rules, because rules, are hard again, because the world becomes so much more dynamic than they want to. But of course, they use models. I can't stand the Phillips curve. I haven't, even when I was in graduate school, it bothered me. Number one, I just don't know the assumptions that they use. And because I've always been a global-oriented person, because I did my graduate work on multinational corporations and their ability to move funds around the world and their impact. So, I have that global orientation. And it was, when I was in school, I'm older than you, Bretton Woods was just breaking down, and everybody was trying to comprehend what the impact of the breakdown of Bretton Woods was going to be. So I was really at a very fortuitous time for me, because I got to learn in real time, to see things in real time. Here, the problem with the Fed and the Phillips curve, and especially once in 1989, once that Berlin Wall comes down, and you have Eastern Europe unleashed upon the global labor markets. You have Asia, the Asian miracle, with the tigers, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, all entering the global marketplace. And of course, then you have China. Well, of course, wages can't rise, let alone with the impact of NAFTA, which was designed for that. Which is why there's still a lot of infighting about it between the Democrats themselves, because you have the Democratic centrists who under Bill Clinton, who pushed it hard, and you had those other members of the more left-leaning of the Democratic Party in the 90s who saw it for what it was, which is its ability to affect wages by design. So what we've been going through for the last 25 years, 30 years, you've had the unfettered access of global capital to wherever they wanted to be. And they went in search of low production costs. So of course the jobs, went. And that's why corporate profits have grown so dramatically, because when capital is allowed to move freely. Now what Trump did say on Friday should have scared a lot of people, but the fact that they were talking in that meetings at the White House about foreign exchange controls, that brings it to a standstill. And the fact that the equity markets kept, climbing, I go, huh? Do you not understand? Because once capital is prohibited from moving freely, corporate profits are going to drop dramatically.
That's one of the foundations of the global economy that has achieved a lot.
Yeah, and Brian, that's the theme of Davos, which I call the International Capitalist Elite, which I always maintain should be peppered spray. They should be made to cry like they've made everybody else cry. No, I use that. I was going to make buttons and sell them. To me, it's pepper spray Davos. It's been my battle cry for years. But when I saw that scene at, I think it was University of California, Davis, when there were these student demonstrators that they just lathered with pepper spray, I say that's what they should do to Davos, because it's where they gather, and what they preach is the unfettered flow of global capital. Now, this is my business, so am I duplicitous? No, I just understand what confronts me. And this is a very, very serious issue. And Main Street, by electing Trump, pushed back at it. That's what that was about. They wanted no more of Hillary because that wasn't going to help them at all.
I think, a concern, though, is often that perhaps Main Street doesn't think the move through. To kind of use a chess reference, trying to think 4 to 6 to 7 moves ahead. Just like in thinking back to when the Tea Party movement started rolling up, in the Wichita metro area here, we're the air capital of the world. Almost all the business jets are made here. And those rallies were populated with assembly line workers. Yeah. That were not really realizing that they were protesting the very thing that was putting food on their table.
That's such a great point, but sometimes they're more astute than people give them credit for, and they see the impact that some of those, the supply chains, are moving productions elsewhere, or, and they get to see, and some have enough vision to go, well, I'm next. It's here now, but I know what the Chinese are doing. So yeah, and I love Wichita, by the way. I drive through on my way down to Arizona.
Couple more questions for you here. One's from Michael. He says the only way to control the currencies is the Chinese way. Blow up your consumer prices inside your economy to wear down savings, so your citizens don't have anything left to wire outside the country.
No, I think that's totally flawed. I would hit back with the Michael Pettis, in which you turn from being an export-oriented economy to a much more consumer-based economy, which the Chinese are in the process of doing, by the way. If you start to look at the growth in the consumer end of the economy versus exports, they're starting to do that. So you can't do that with a weak currency. that's the ones who push at Trump going, hey, we're a consumer-based economy. If you weaken the dollar, it's going to raise the costs for American consumers. Yes, that will be one of the offshoots, but he thinks that the politics and the optics of bringing jobs or the sense that you're going to bring jobs is better than the minimus. Think about Wilbur Ross walking out with that can, right? When they put on the tariffs?
Right.
This is going to cost you 2 more cents. Yeah, you won't even feel it. So it works all kinds of ways. But the Chinese know that if you're really going to shift, and Professor Pettis has written I've read for years, A Great Rebalancing. He's written some great books, and he teaches in China, and he's well respected in China. Weakening the currency on your move to become a consumer-based economy is not you're going to wind up taxing your citizens, and that's not a popular move. So I would disagree with that. It's not quite that easy.
And then Adam posts here, it says, how does the cryptocurrency come in if the currency is bound up?
If the what?
If the currency is bound up. So I'm thinking what he's referring to here is that capital controls in China, and then how does that spill over into crypto?
Well, it all depends what the crypto is. If we look at what Libra is really about, it's really recreating an SDR, but one, instead of controlled by the IMF, will be controlled by Facebook, because it's going to be based on a basket of fiat currencies, which is interesting. Because if I was doing it, I would put in 20% gold, and I'd say, now you got something. But you already see that the government, the United States and everybody else is nervous about it because they see where it can lead to. And again, it's the whole thing with Bitcoin and everything else. And I warned people years ago, governments don't like competition. They don't like competition. And so it all depends how it's put together, how effective, again, I'm a big believer in the blockchain, and how it all spills out, I don't know. But blockchain, if it does half of what I've learned, a third of what I've been told and read about and watched YouTubes about, it'll create massive upheavals. That's what this internet phenomenon has done. I was having this conversation this morning with Eddie Linker, because I'm in some movies deals with him, and it's amazing how streaming has destroyed the whole experience of going to the movie. And I like going to movies, but you can't go see a good movie because nobody wants to put a good movie into a theater because nobody wants to go. So
making worse and worse movies.
Yeah, you're right, because then hey, I may as well make a shit movie, or I need a blockbuster like the Avengers or whatever, and I'll get those out because it has mass world appeal. It's easy, but
hey, here's a good movie. This is a good movie, by the way. Ron Howard made a documentary on Pavarotti. It was really good. Just came out.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah, go if you're in the city, go see Sword of Trust. Full disclosure, I do own a piece of that one, but it's but it's a good movie. It's 90 minutes, and how long will it play? Sword of Trust.
Where's it at?
It's played at the Music Box, or it's up in Highland Park at the Landmark now, I think, Renaissance.
Music Box serves beer. There you go.
Yeah, he's got a great thing going because it's for people who still like to go to movies. They show 3 or 4 movies. He's got other stuff going on there. They do sing-alongs. It's, we're still social animals. Human beings are still social animals. They haven't destroyed it yet. When they do, then we're going to be in very dangerous times. But we're still social animals, and we enjoy, it's like, hey, I still like to go to if I'm going to go to a bar, I'll go to Howl at the Moon because I enjoy the singing, the piano play. It's fun.
You're right. I enjoyed it too.
It's fun. I really think it's the experience, and it is fun. I don't get that, but that's such a world that we live in. So on the crypto end, I just don't know. There's so many variations on the theme that now Facebook is now changing it, but you see the pushback that's coming, and they may be sorry that they opened up that gate.
Countries, as you said earlier, countries don't like countries don't like competition, and
they don't like competition.
And they want to be able to tax you, and they don't want you to hide your money through crypto, and they
Yeah.
want to be transparent. So it's,
Yeah, well, listen, the things that governments, hold near and dear is the ability to tax and the ability to create money. That's two things they hold, and it's in the Constitution of the United States that was written, 1787, so 236 years ago. They laid it out. Go read it. Go read the sections on minting coin and taxation. And listen, we fought a revolutionary war for the ability to tax.
was it? I can't remember in what news feed, whether it was EFT or something else this morning about taxation in Britain or Australia or something. They were trying to redefine it.
Yeah, well,
on a micro level.
yeah, it's. I mean, that's what makes governments government. They fight. They will go to war for that ability. So, just because somebody has it in their head doesn't mean that it's always the best outcome.
All right, so we got one.
Angelo, are we happy with that, or where else do we want to go? Because I'm.
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay, I didn't want.
Let's call it the Putin coin. It makes total sense to me that behind the scenes, China, Russia, Iran, Turkey, North Korea, are already working behind the scenes, according to Rickards, to create a digital currency, right? To create a digital currency anchored to gold, and they will conduct business in the digital currency, and once or twice a year, just settle up, the net out the transactions via gold.
Yeah.
Instead of moving chunks of gold around, they're just going to move the digital currency around amongst themselves.
Yeah. Well, listen, and as long as enough people, it's the same with Bitcoin. If you can get enough traction with people to accept it as a means of exchange and a store of value, those are the two. But if the means of exchange helps create its store of value, bingo, bingo, bingo. It works.
Well, this is why Russia and China continue to accumulate gold.
Oh yeah.
At these prices and in dollars for the moment.
They should, it's absolutely right.
It's still bid against those.
But there won't be. I mean, I don't think if there's let's call it a Putin coin for sake of argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they will allow an alternative.
Well. Yeah, will they have the ability to do that? We don't know. We don't know. Don't forget, it helps to have a big navy.
Yeah. Let me guys, one more thing here, Ira, from Mike. He said, do you think that the move to some of these stable coins is a way to create a reputation score type of shadow market on the blockchain en route towards negative rates, being like a premium paid for lower counterparty risk? And then he states, I thought it was interesting after seeing an IMF paper talking about e-money as a way to remove cash from circulation as well.
Who's that, Mike?
Another Mike. And this is a different Mike.
I agree with him wholeheartedly. People look at me because I walk around with cash and I make stores. I love doing it. First of all, because I don't want everybody to know where I've been. So anytime you use a credit card, somebody is monitoring you and knows everything that you're doing. I want cash because to me, cash is a form of freedom. Now, he's 100% right in everything that he said, everything that was just said there. And the key to it is guys like Larry Summers and even Rogoff. I have to think of this, Professor Rogoff and others have in order to be effective, and they've promoted this. What's Rogoff's first name? It's bothering me.
Ken.
Ken Rogoff. Thank you. They've promoted this because the only way that negative interest rates work is if you have electronic money. Because then they can force you to spend. Because don't forget, if you go to negative interest rates, what you're basically trying to do is create demand. This is the final act of, and I don't know that John Maynard Keynes would ever have gotten behind it, but it's a way. Because if your money, who's that? Stevie Miller, your cash ain't nothing but trash.
Yeah.
So when your cash ain't nothing but trash, it doesn't take a genius to figure out I'm better off spending it, which is why they went down to zero in the U.S., but they went negative in Europe. But people are still hoarding because there are certain rules of economics that actually do hold. In Keynes's paradox of thrift, which is when you get nervous and you start saving more because you go, well, something must be going on here, then demand turns down even faster. That was his paradox of thrift that Paul McCauley of PIMCO fame, who's actually gotten behind the MMT crowd just for that reason, because you want to force people to spend their money to try to create demand to lift the economy up. And he's 100%, and that's why these guys are out there. They're telling you get rid of cash. Larry Summers first was the $100 bill. Like they got rid of the 500 euro note because it was supposedly used for illegal. You know what? I'm a patriot. I'm a Thomas Paine patriot. I value freedom, and if criminal activity is a small price of large denominated bills, I'm willing to live with that criminal activity rather than the criminal activity of bankers doing whatever else they do. So he's 100% right. The movement towards the movement to electronic money is a response to be able to go to negative interest rates to force you to take your money out of your mattress because you won't be able to hold it in your mattress anymore. So I do an act of civil disobedience by using cash. That's my act of civil disobedience. I use credit cards.
Yeah, there's places now too that you can't even use cash. Like there's a pizza place in Wicker Park. You have to use a credit card.
Yeah, I get in fights with them all the time. All those places.
Well, they do it for safety, but they also don't want to take cash.
They don't want to take cash. I know. I know. And I'm actually hedged because I do have an investment in Davo. Owen Brown's firm Davo, which is about collecting sales tax at the source. So, yeah, this is, and I view this as very dangerous. But there are people who will, if I have this at a dinner discussion, they look at me like I'm crazy, because nobody in the media has enough courage to discuss it. But it's very real, and when you read policy papers, I love reading white papers from certain organizations. You got to pay attention to them because that's where they're doing their thinking, and that's what their thinking is: how to make sure that you don't save money. They don't want you hoarding money.
Well, I'll give you.
Wasn't there a European country that tried it? I don't know if it was Sweden or somebody, and then they reversed it because there was so much flack.
I think somebody's been experimenting with it. They're trying to push it in Japan to use credit cards, but Japan, if anybody's ever been there, I have been there several times. They're a very cash-based society. It's one of the things I love about them, because I like that. You know what? And if if people hide money, okay, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. Up until 1934, as my buddy Norb would tell you, the $1,000 bill was in circulation. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, and then they took
Grover Cleveland
and the silver certificates.
No, not Grover. Who's on the 1,000?
No, it was Cleveland.
Oh, it is Grover Cleveland. I'm sorry. McKinley's on the 10,500. Yeah. I have a couple of them because they're collector's items. But if you go look at PAX, if you make your way to River Forest and look in the walls, you'll probably find some.
Oh, for sure.
Hey, Ira, try getting Italy to go cashless.
Yeah, you know what? I love the Italians because they know it. You know, that's one of the great things about Salvini, because he knows that if somebody would go down that route, then he's got no leverage whatsoever.
Half the damn country is underground.
Oh yeah. I love going to Italy for that. You know, you walk around with cash, you're like, yeah, paisan, what's going on? no credit cards, they want cash. You know what? Hey, whether you pay your that's, you know, catch me. But this idea of creating this electronic money, I'm so opposed to, because I think it's so detrimental to the freedoms that I love. And you could say, well, you're nuts. I say, yeah, I'm nuts. Don't take away that choice from me.
Here, Ira, there's Michael saying, yeah, the Chinese are forced to, all of it is to go digital wallet. Now they crack down on prostitution effectively because people are paying it using Alipay and many other things. Yeah, and I was at
Venmo
for dinner, and his son-in-law, you know, has been very active in Silicon Valley startups, other things.
Mm-hmm.
Others at Zoom, and the interesting conversation last night at dinner about just being tracked.
Yeah.
When I talk to my wife, we take our cell phones, unhook up on our computers, we put them in another room because you're being listened to.
You're being tracked. Well, that I can't leave the house with telling me how far it is to where I'm going? I haven't even asked them.
With your phone popping up, that's absolutely right. I had my BlackBerry until about a year and a half ago. I was probably the last schmuck in America with the BlackBerry.
Yeah, well, they told me to get a Nokia flip phone again if I didn't want to be tracked.
That's true.
It's, you know what, and I'm not paranoid. These are some of the freedoms. I'm telling you, there's this great book. It's not an easy read. It's called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff from Harvard. She doesn't write often, but she wrote this book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. It's a mandatory read to understand what the actual concept of collection of big data really means.
I'm ordering that book today.
I'm telling you, I'm about. I let it sit for too long because I have to absorb everything that's said. But she has that quote in there about Sheryl Sandberg. You know who she is?
Yeah.
CFO of Facebook.
Yeah, she's not really liked by a lot of people, even in Silicon Valley. They refer to her as Typhoid Mary of big data.
Wow.
You know, they understand what the power that they have and what they're, and it's all about monetizing it. You know, why is Facebook stock, when it was first brought, it went from 40 to 18, yeah, and all it's done is climb because the ability to monetize that data is real.
Well, she works for a lying sack of shit.
Well, yeah, that's why I bought the stock in the low 20s. I didn't hold on to it long enough, but I said the fact that they say anybody who tells me that it's like with Google that they're out to do good, it's not your primary objective. If good things happen to it, that's fine. But you're out to make as much money as you can, and that's fine. I'm a capitalist. But don't bullshit you. It's really the government's fault because they granted a monopoly with those certain laws that were passed back in the 90s. She goes through them. I have them written out all over the place. That's the thing. It was done under the tutelage of the government.
Yeah. All right. So we got a bunch of other stuff here that people are putting in, just so you guys know that Ira, he calls in on his phone, so he doesn't actually see what you guys are writing. So it was Sweden that instituted the cashless society in the mid 80s and reverted by the early 90s. But he said now that most of the Scandinavian countries are trying to move to cashless societies. Michael says that Sandberg should go to Tesla. She can manage.
Wait, who said who? Oh, Sandberg should go to Tesla. Yeah. I forget it. I can't say what I was going to say.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, okay. I'm a gentleman. She suffered enough. I don't have to.
Didn't India try to go cashless, and it fell just a year or two ago?
Yeah,
I think so, Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, Modi. Certain things, because India's a cash society and they hide so much fucking money.
Right.
So with Modi and then my favorite central banker, Raghuram, it met with a lot. That's a tough haul. But there's ways that they can force you. But you know what? The populace has the ability to push back too, and I push back, and if people tell me that they don't take cash, I'll stop using them. I'll go to where they will take cash.
I agree.
Order your pizza and say, here's $10, take it or leave it.
Yeah, you know what? That's your problem. That's your problem, and I'm adamant about using it because number one, because then if I use credit cards, then I'm getting advertised by everybody anyway. You know what? And you got to give up your email. Leave me alone. I don't want to be invaded.
Ira, that's a generational thing. My daughter's 23.
Yeah.
Right, and she doesn't carry cash. Yeah. Right, and I'm like, at least stick a 20 in your wallet, okay, just in case. $4 charges, $3 charges for coffee.
I know.
I'm like, seriously?
Yeah, I know.
Now they put it on your watch. I've got an Apple Watch, and my wife wants me to get Apple Pay on my watch. So when I go to Starbucks, I put my watch up. Are you kidding me? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know.
And they just don't seem to care that everything is being tracked.
No, they don't, and they put their information out there. Like, I tell my kids, and they're in their 30s. What are you, stupid? What are you, stupid? Hey, listen, and I don't even use credit cards. And in the last year, I've had my credit card stolen twice.
Your number or the actual card?
The number.
Oh, I hate that.
I know.
Well, they got a hold of when my daughter was going to Fordham in the Bronx. It was like every 3 or 4 months we had to get a new card. So, there was a charge for Aeroflot, the Russian airline.
Yeah, I've seen them all.
Okay, yeah, and a train ticket in Germany.
Right.
Among other shit. But yeah, it's ridiculous.
Well, I'm glad she's living a full life.
Thank you, Daddy.
Oh boy.
Oh, that's where I was over the weekend, picking her up in D.C. to bring her back home. She did a summer internship at the SEC.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's in law school, so she was down there for the summer.
Well, she must have got a lot of naps in working at the SEC because they're definitely asleep on the job.
I was just going to say that. What you do, sleep all summer, Ange?
Yeah,
what's interesting is a friend of hers, Ira, what's interesting is that a friend of hers from the gym is good friends and partners with Jay Clayton, from Sullivan and Cromwell. And so Bob kept calling Jay Clayton, right, and said, you got to have lunch with Cassie. You got to have lunch. So 2 weeks ago, he called her up, and she was like, what the hell is this 202 number? And it was him saying, hey, what are you doing tomorrow morning? At 10 o'clock. And she's like, what can I do for you? And he's like, come to my office. So she did. And I said to her, I had just read about the exchange fee pilot program, that 12 out of the 13 exchanges filed an injunction against the SEC for even wanting to enact the pilot program to study the issue of rebates, with high-frequency traders, and the front running and all of that. And I told her, I said, when you meet with them, ask them about it.
Yeah.
And see, what they're going to do about it. And how they're so they're slimming it down.
Yeah.
But anyway, What to do about nothing.
Yeah.
Because when he's done, he's going back to Sullivan and Cromwell.
But yeah, good. Rodkin Cohn, one of the worst human beings. They wrote the legislation of. They're the ones who wrote Dodd-Frank. So that's just factual. They wrote Dodd-Frank. Oh, I'm sorry, Barney. And did anybody ever wonder why Barney and Chris Dodd retired both after that legislation? They both left.
Sure, absolutely.
One of the funniest things I ever saw Jay Leno do was the guy from I think it was Bank. They did a Bank of America, and he was going through the airport, and he kept going through security, and they said empty your pocket. So finally, when he finally emptied his last pocket, he pulled Chris Dodd out of the pocket. I think it was Leno. I was dying.
That is great.
Yeah.
Not something that I would expect from him. It's not something I've seen anybody talk about.
Yeah, it was good. Very good.
So the dollar's still holding up, Ira. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Listen, it's still tough to be short dollars because the expense that you give away. Yeah. Even at zero interest rates versus 2.25%, it's expensive on overnight money.
I was thinking if we got above 98.37, which is sort of the halfway mark between the current level and the Plaza Accord fib. I was thinking that we might run up there.
Let's see. Hold on.
As one last gasp.
Are you looking at the spot or the September contract?
No, the spot.
Yeah, spot. That chart. I mean, the daily reflects the dollar strength. The weekly's nice too, but I could see some fairly significant resistance. We've held the 200 week, we've held the 200 day. I mean, this is packed in pretty good here, and this is with Trump, trying to make it an issue that just won't seem to gain traction for him. But again, I'm not enamored. There's so much uncertainty, and I think August is going to be a wickedly crazy month. Everybody hopes it's not because they all want to be on vacation. But I just think, with Brexit now first at the forefront, you got Trump beating drums. I just don't see it. I think there's a lot of stuff out there.
I think Uncle Mario the Magician gave Powell cover to do nothing this week.
Yeah, you're right, and I thought about that. But it's listen. I wish he would do nothing. Yeah, because he would regain the high ground that he surrendered.
I mean, look, technically, they're still raising rates because the balance sheet is still running. Yeah,
sure. But he can announce Wednesday that they're going to, it's the QT is supposed to end September 30th. It'd be interesting if he pulled back faster. But I've talked to some people who say it's not really doable because too much financing is set up to that September date, 30th date. But we'll see.
I wonder how much liquidity, QT is sucking out of the system.
Well, yes, more than it's been a hammer, and that's with they've walked down the short end because I'm looking at the Fed funds contract. August is already priced at 97.90, so 2.10. So they're looking for a cut. November is at 98.18, so they're looking for a second cut. 2 cuts by November. So.
What do you suppose would happen if Powell did nothing or does nothing this week?
Oh, gold will get whacked. The equities would get hit, but I'd be looking down at that 29.70 area to buy them because I think you'd get there quick. The curves will flatten dramatically.
Yeah.
Those are things that I'm certain will happen. What else happens after that? But the equity market.
Does Powell act to placate? The question is, does he act to placate the markets, you know, or
Well, they surrendered to the markets, which is a bad thing. But what can you do?
Angela, I wanted to make a point about your question about how much liquidity QT pulls out of the market. As long as the world comes to the U.S. equity markets looking for yield in the S&P, which is scary, and other equities, then it doesn't matter how much. I think it offsets what kind of liquidity QT is pulling out. If they stop QT, then what does that do to the market?
Well, I mean, at the moment, Ira, wouldn't you say that, you know, the U.S. banks and their European conduits, right? I mean, if there's a dollar shortage, at the moment, it's the U.S. banks via, you know, the pipes leading out to Europe to lend them dollars so that they can do whatever it is they got to do.
Yeah, those are the swaps. But see, coupled with the QT and with the rate raise was the regs, and how much, you know, high quality liquidity the banks have to hold on to. You know, and this has kind of hurt it too. So it's not a simple answer. It's the compendium of all those things that have really started, you know, that did for a while play some havoc with that. And now the market, you know, they're waiting to see how this goes. And you know what? And maybe the Fed's going to announce that they're going to be more than cut the Fed funds. Maybe they'll actually do something with the interest on excess reserves. We're getting into interesting moments. And I only say we're getting into it because we've seen a few things, you know, going back to the Richard Clarida and John Williams, you know, very aggressive speeches, which would really set the market up for for 50 basis points, then it gets walked back. So what's going on here? Who's trying to send what message? It's and we got these all in play. All right, give me the next couple you got, and then I'm.
Hey, Ira.
Yeah.
How's it going? This
Who
is
is
Michael.
this? Oh, Mike. How are you, Mike?
Hey. So, a couple of interesting notes. All right. You know, the Chinese nationals, they are pretty active about, you know, buying the U.S. assets like real estates and commercials, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just last month, I've got some contacts, people trying to get to me to find funding sources for their operations in the United States. And the reason being, the Chinese government, the mainland Chinese government, are so hard on cracking down shadow banking and interstate black market currency exchanges. They couldn't find anything. They couldn't find a reliable source to get them U.S. dollars. It's very concerning because some people they work in China and they use their proceeds earned in China to convert them into U.S. dollars and then put them into the United States to buy houses and commercial real estates. And they couldn't even find a reliable source to get U.S. dollars anymore to pay their mortgages.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
Oh,
it's very concerning.
Yeah.
To me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I live in a let's call it Asian neighborhood. And some people are behind on their mortgages, and their rates are through the roof, the penalty rates, because they missed payments. So I'm thinking.
So this is in the United States, and they can't get the dollars to pay their mortgages in the States.
Yep. They couldn't convert the Chinese yuan to U.S. dollars to pay their mortgages. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, to say the least, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ira, that concept. Ira, what Michael just said, that concept takes me back to Trump and a strong dollar. Like, if Trump had half a freaking brain, he'd realize that a strong dollar is going to continue to put pressure on China in a variety of ways.
Yeah, and a lot of the other emerging markets who are choking on debt.
Well, that too, but you know, hey,
it's a dangerous. You know, you can go down that road, but you may open up a can of whoopee that you're going to be sorry about, because again, too strong a dollar. The dollar is, as Angelo, as you write, with the carry trade. You know, a lot of people borrowed in them, and that's the essence of the carry trade. So, be careful because of the amount of debt that's out there.
no question. You know, but we need a good economic forest fire to flush the system.
Yeah, you say that, but yeah.
That would be really painful for the
Of course.
Main Street guys.
Oh yeah, yeah. Except that, you know what, you've crushed them anyway. And I'll go back to Brian. You know, the whole concept, and we have to be. And again, let's go back to the electronic money too. You know, you're talking about financial repression. Zero interest rates are financial repression, and are all about the basis of who gets screwed. Do borrowers get screwed, or do creditors get screwed? It's always the road you get to in the global system. Yeah, they'll each take their turn.
But if you have a good economic forest fire, at least a lot of the elites will get carried out too.
Yeah, it's my friend Kevin talks about that. That it's the problem with what happened in 2008 and 2009 is that the financial elites never suffered by being totally discredited. They may, as smart people say, no, they only wound up making more money.
Yep.
That's Tim Geithner, and my disdain for that ass is unlimited.
I mean, you can't fault Dick Fold for being, you know, an arrogant pig.
No, that's not a cardinal sin. It may be, you know, some kinds of sin, but that's not a criminal offense. Otherwise, we'd have an impeachable offense for sure. It's but again, you know, and this is, we don't know when it plays out, but all things in the world when it comes to finance revolve around debt and the ability to extend credit and the ability to repay credit. And when you ramp it up, you know, and my analysis is always on the global macro. So when you look at it through that lens, which is a very wide lens, you know, there's a lot of things that play out. Who was it the other day? I watched him on TV when he talked about foreign currencies. Oh, Alan Greenspan said, you know, maybe it was Steve Leisman. I started laughing. Alan Greenspan said even he doesn't understand foreign currencies, and the only way to understand them is to flip a coin. Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you all feel that way. Keeps me going.
And I think it was Friday morning on Bloomberg. I think he said, well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with negative interest rates, but nothing's broken yet.
Who said that? Greenspan?
Greenspan.
Oh, God.
On Friday.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that.
Yeah,
what a pathetic.
But, you know, negative rates, but nothing's broken yet.
Well, what a comfort that is.
A guy who can't trade his way out of a paper bag.
Right. That's the interesting thing. They bring these people out to discuss market action. They don't have a clue. All right, I'm going to, unless there's some other pressing questions, I'm going to...
All right, see you, Ira.
Okay,
thank you so much,
guys. All right, I know,
So
Judd, you're done Thursday, right, Judd?
Yeah, Thursday,
Okay.
and then I'm out until the 12th.
All right, let me see. Maybe Wednesday before the Fed, maybe I'll pop in just to see what's going on.
Okay, great.
Okay, all right.
Sarah.
Bye. Hello?